Hi, I'm Mara Linsky-Deegan, and I'm the Associate Curator and Registrar here at the Charles H. MacNider Art Museum in Mason City, Iowa. And today I'm going to talk just a little bit about the artist Grant Wood. Grant Wood was born in Anamosa, Iowa in 1891. And he grew up there as a young child, but then in 1901, after his father passed away, his mother moved their family to Cedar Rapids. And he kind of grew up in that area, and he went to Washington High School. And as a young boy, he showed a real affinity to art. He loved art and loved creating art, even as a very young child, and actually was quite good at it. He really just was so interested in art, but didn't quite know what he wanted to do with his life. He wasn't sure if being an artist was something that he could support a family with. So he went to school, high school, and then on to college, and decided that he was going to become a teacher. And so in 1911, he became a teacher at a one-room schoolhouse, and he did that for several years. But then decided, you know what, that he really did want to study art. So in 1913, he enrolled at the art school at the Art Institute of Chicago. And to support himself through school, he was actually a silversmith, which is something that he apprenticed as when he was a younger child, like in high school. And an apprentice is somebody who goes and works with a master in something, like silversmithing or like an artist. There's all kinds of different people that you could apprentice with, and you learn from them. So it's kind of like a one-on-one teaching relationship. So he worked with somebody, was able to become a silversmith, and that's how he supported himself through school. So from 1922 until 1935, Grant Wood actually moved back in with his mother and lived with her. And they lived in a carriage house, which was an old kind of big garage that people used to put their carriages in with horses and things, so it had to be kind of large. And so after carriages kind of went out of favor when cars came in, a lot of people had these giant carriage houses and they didn't know what to do with them. So a lot of times they'd rent them out, they'd kind of renovate them into little apartments and rent them out to folks. And so Grant Wood and his mother lived in one of those, and they didn't have an address. So Grant Wood, we need to have an address, so he kind of made one up. And it was called 5 Turner Alley, and he decided that that would be his studio. So he actually would live there with his mother, but then also used it as his art studio, the place to create his art. So in 1932, Grant Wood helped form the Stone City Art Colony, and that was a place in Iowa where different artists that were not making a good living during the Depression. A lot of people didn't have a lot of money in the 1930s, and especially artists, because people didn't have money to buy art. So even if they wanted to make it, they just didn't have a group of people that would want to purchase their art to kind of keep them going. So the Stone City Art Colony was formed to kind of help those folks live together, support each other, and then also kind of branch out into the WPA, the Works Project Administration, which was a group that gave all kinds of different people in the 1930s different jobs, including artists. So there were a lot of artists that were employed by the government to make all kinds of art, and that is something that Grant Wood was very involved with as well. In fact, he was the leader of the WPA project in Iowa for a time. So most people know Grant Wood for his paintings like American Gothic, which is pretty famous, and then also for his drawings. But what a lot of people don't know is that he did all kinds of art, including things like lithographs, which is what our museum has. But he also did mixed media sculptures and found object sculptures, and he would work in pretty much anything you would give him. He'd find a way to make something creative out of it. He even one time made a chandelier out of corn cobs, which is pretty cool. But the collection in our museum are all lithographs, which is a kind of art print. Kind of similar to a wood block print, which would be very like a stamp. It's not exactly the same. If you want to learn a little bit about lithography, which is what it's called, that's a great thing to look up online, and they can give you a whole demonstration, especially YouTube. If you put in lithograph or lithography, you can see all kinds of videos of people making lithographs and how it's done. But today we're just going to talk about the actual pieces that we have here in our museum. We have 19 lithographs by Grant Wood. And actually, it's kind of cool, Grant Wood made 19 different lithographs when he was creating prints. And we got our first lithograph into our collection in 1967, which was quite a long time ago. And we got the 19th one. We finally completed the whole set last year in 2019. So it took us a while, but we're happy to have the whole set, including this great one right here called January. Grant Wood was an artist that was associated with a group of artists called Regionalists. And Grant Wood's probably one of the most famous of the Regionalist artists. And what the Regionalists would do is they would really focus on the Midwest. A lot of them were from the Midwest, places like Missouri and Iowa and Kansas and places right around this area. And what they would do is show really idyllic versions of farm life in the Midwest. Most of these were kind of happy, pretty abundant. Maybe there would be something like a storm coming, but it wouldn't be things that would be very traumatic for a farmer, like a drought or a blight or not having any harvest to pull in. So if you even look at a work like this one right here, you can see there's the farmer with all of this corn and hay and lots of things. You can see all the corn in that corn wagon behind them. Very idyllic, very happy. And part of that is because in the 1930s, when a lot of these artists were working, again, we were going through the Great Depression here in America, and a lot of people didn't have much, and it was a little sad. And so these works of art were kind of, I think, to kind of make people feel nostalgic for when it wasn't so, when times weren't so tough, but then also to show how great the middle of America was. This piece right here, I really like, and this is one that's just kind of fun. It's a little bit different than some of the other Regionalist works, which a lot of times have farmers and show crops. This one kind of shows some hay and wheat there, but the fun thing about it is you can see some little tracks through the snow. And I always like to think, what kind of animal I think would make those tracks? Now I know what I think made them, but I want you guys to think about what you think made those tracks, and maybe is living in this little hay stack. So Grant Wood actually died kind of young. He actually died one day before his 51st birthday, which is a little bit odd. Sometimes people are born and died so close to each other, but he actually had cancer, and so that's why he died so young. But when he died, his estate went to his sister, Nan. Now, Nan is famous, probably most famous, because she is actually the model that's in American Gothic for the woman. So if you see that painting and look at that woman, and then were to look at a picture of what Grant Wood looked like, you would say, hey, those two people look very similar, and that's because Nan was his sister, and they look kind of the same. And so when Nan passed away many years later, the estate actually went to the Figge Art Museum in the Quad Cities. And so a lot of the papers and things about his studio are held there.